What if everything historians have taught us about life in the northern forests is long outdated? A secret passed down from generation to generation reveals a completely different level of human interaction with the harsh conditions of the winter taiga. The indigenous peoples of the subarctic developed a unique system of continuous daily labor based on a deep understanding of natural processes. This complex system allowed them to comfortably organize their lives amidst endless snow for many months. The geography of their permanent settlements spanned vast territories of dense forests with extremely low temperatures and biting winds. A historical focus on the pre-contact period demonstrates these communities' incredible adaptability to prolonged and devastating snowstorms. Every action of the adult members of the group was strictly regulated and governed by strict laws of conserving precious human energy. Nature constantly dictated its harsh conditions, forcing people to ceaselessly improve methods for building sturdy and warm dwellings. A typical winter day consisted of a multitude of extremely complex tasks requiring immense physical endurance and the utmost concentration. Any error in precise calculations during the construction of a shelter could have fatal consequences for the entire settlement. That is why every craft was honed over many years of continuous, arduous practice in the most extreme and unpredictable weather conditions. Watch the video to the end to discover the secret of maintaining perfect warmth right in the epicenter of an ice storm. What happens in the shade of a dense spruce forest during camp construction challenges all established notions of architecture. The Cree's unconventional approach involved using natural depressions in the forest terrain to create the most reliable windbreak possible. The adult craftsmen carefully selected a suitable location, methodically assessing the density of the snow cover and the direction of the prevailing cold winds. The trees surrounding the future campsite served as an excellent natural framework, which was further reinforced with thick chopped branches and logs. The process of clearing the chosen forest site always began with the systematic removal of the top layer of loose snow using wide wooden shovels. People trampled the lower layer until it became a solid crust capable of supporting the enormous weight of the future tent's heavy structure. An incredibly thick layer of fresh spruce branches was laid on the prepared, level surface to create a reliable insulating cushion. This thick green bedding completely prevented the snow from melting under the constant heat of the future indoor hearth. The framework of a traditional dwelling consisted of long, flexible poles made from young, sturdy, deciduous trees. These wooden elements were arranged in a circle and securely bound at the top with strong plant fibers and roots. The conical shape provided ideal aerodynamics, allowing strong gusts of the north wind to smoothly curve around the structure without the risk of collapse. Snow did not accumulate on the steep roof slopes, which ruled out the possibility of the structure collapsing under the weight of precipitation. Pre-prepared dense coverings made of sewn-together pieces of thick leather were laid in overlapping layers over the sturdy wooden frame. The lower edge of this covering was additionally covered with a large amount of dense snow to completely prevent drafts at ground level. A small opening was always left in the very center of the roof, serving both as a vent and a chimney for the indoor hearth. The angle of the upper covering flaps could be adjusted using long poles depending on the direction of the wind. The interior of the yurt was strictly divided into zones in accordance with centuries-old traditions and the practical needs of each adult. The central part was always reserved for a spacious stone hearth, which served as the main source of light and vital heat. Around the fire were work areas for daytime crafts, where artisans made tools and mended clothing. Sleeping areas were set up closer to the warm walls of the dwelling and covered with additional layers of insulating and soft materials. The entrance to the winter dwelling was always designed on the leeward side and protected by a double canopy made of the densest materials. This design created a sort of vestibule, preventing the interior from cooling rapidly when people entered or exited. Wooden struts inside the vestibule prevented the heavy fabric from sagging and ensured unobstructed passage with loads. A ready supply of dry firewood was always kept near the entrance to maintain the fire throughout the long, cold night. Special attention was paid to regularly clearing the area adjacent to the tent of constantly accumulating snowdrifts and loose snow. Trodden narrow paths led to the main wood-gathering sites and hidden sources of clean drinking water. Over time, the snow around the dwelling compacted so much that one could walk on it freely without using snowshoes. This network of cleared paths significantly conserved energy when performing routine but extremely important daily tasks. Lighting inside the tent during the dark hours was provided not only by a central fire, but also by small pans of melted fat. Down feathers or twisted dry moss were used as wicks, producing an even, smokeless yellow flame. This soft light allowed them to continue their painstaking work on the fine details of their tools even during the long winter evenings. Conserving fuel supplies for lighting required the strictest economy and careful use of every available resource. Any damage to the structure of the dwelling, even the smallest, was repaired immediately to avoid serious problems with heat retention. Spare wooden poles and fastening materials were always kept on hand for emergency repairs. Constant monitoring of the tent's condition was the direct responsibility of the most experienced and senior members of the forest community. Setting up such a complex winter camp required tremendous effort and precise planning of every step taken. The entire community worked with incredible coordination to finish the main construction work strictly before dusk. Working together brought people closer and ensured a high level of safety in the midst of completely wild and harsh nature. I wonder how this topic is perceived in different parts of the world, and what viewers think about such survival methods. Leave your comment on this, and be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new research. The secret, passed down from generation to generation, lies in choosing the right wood for long-lasting winter heating. At extremely low temperatures, wood freezes solid and becomes as hard as a solid piece of rock. People specifically sought out standing deadwood that had long since lost its natural moisture and was much easier to cut with tools. The harvesting process required incredible caution to prevent the brittle stone axes from shattering in the severe dry frost. Gathering firewood was a continuous daily task, upon the completion of which the very existence of the entire forest settlement depended. Men ventured deep into the thicket, clearing wide trail through the deep snow to facilitate the subsequent transport of loads. Choosing the right tree was a true art, requiring knowledge of the burning characteristics of different types of wood. Spruce provided a quick heat, birch burned long and evenly, and pine was used for lighting due to its high resin content. Felling large dead trees was carried out by methodically undercutting the trunk from all sides using heavy stone or bone wedges. The tree was guided so that when it fell, it would not damage neighboring trunks or get stuck in dense branches. After a successful felling, the trunk was cleared of small branches, which were tied into separate compact bundles for kindling. The cleared trunk was then sawed into pieces of equal length, convenient for further transport to the main camp. Moving heavy logs through deep snow required the use of special flat sleds woven from flexible branches. The prepared firewood was carefully placed on these sleds and securely fastened with strong straps made of thick rawhide. Hauling such a load required an enormous amount of energy, forcing people to take frequent breaks to rest. Proper weight distribution on the sleds prevented them from tipping over and sinking into the loose forest snowdrifts. Upon arrival at the camp, the firewood was never piled into a single large, chaotic heap near the entrance to the dwelling. There was a strict system for sorting the logs by size, wood species, and residual moisture content. The driest and smoothest pieces were set aside for use at night, when a steady, long-burning fire was needed. Small twigs and kindling were stored in separate woven baskets and used exclusively for quickly starting a fire. Slightly damp wood was dried inside the dwelling on special wooden racks set up near the hearth. Warm air from the fire slowly drew out excess moisture, preparing the logs for maximum efficiency. This process required constant monitoring to prevent the stacked firewood from accidentally catching fire from a stray spark. Proper rotation of fuel supplies ensured the uninterrupted operation of the main hearth in all weather conditions. To split thick logs into smaller pieces of firewood, massive logs and wedges made from the hardest types of wood were used. Precise and powerful strikes with a stone hammer on the wedge allowed even the most stubborn and knotty logs to be split evenly. This work required great physical strength and excellent judgment to avoid wasting energy on fruitless strikes. The chopped firewood was stacked in neat piles, shielding the dwelling from additional drafts coming from the north. Fuel consumption increased significantly during severe frosts, forcing the community to spend more time searching for suitable trees. Sometimes they had to travel significant distances from the camp to find untouched areas of forest with good deadwood. On such days, gathering firewood became the top priority, pushing all other daily chores to the back burner. Only a huge supply of high-quality wood could guarantee a peaceful winter without the risk of freezing to death. Each log brought back was carefully stacked in a special woodpile to maintain an even fire without thick, acrid smoke. The constant heat from the central hearth saved the community from the bitter cold and created comfortable conditions for a good night's rest. The proper distribution of firewood of various sizes allowed them to regulate the temperature inside the tent with incredible precision. How did the craftsmen manage to move through 3 meters of snow during these arduous forest expeditions? I will reveal the best-kept secret of creating perfect snowshoes without using a single metal nail or fastener. The uniqueness of this ancient craft lay in the use of steamed ash wood, which easily took on the desired oval shape. The craftsmen carefully bent the prepared branches, securing them with sturdy leather straps and long plant fibers. The shape of each snowshoe was calculated strictly on an individual basis according to the person's weight to ensure maximum and reliable support. The process began with selecting a young straight tree without a single flaw or knot on the surface of the future frame. The trunk was carefully split along the grain into thin, flexible slats, which were then meticulously smoothed with stone scrapers. The sharp edges of the slats were smoothed to prevent the fastening straps from chafing during long forest treks. The finished wooden blanks were immersed in a container of hot water to give them maximum elasticity before bending. The steamed wood was slowly and extremely carefully wrapped around a special wooden template that determined the shape of the snowshoe. The ends of the bent slats were securely tied together, forming a characteristic pointed tail that helped maintain balance. 2 crosswise wooden struts were installed inside the resulting frame, giving the structure the necessary rigidity. The frame was left to dry in a cool place for several days so that the wood would permanently retain its new shape. The most critical stage was weaving the inner net, which came into direct contact with the deep snow. For this purpose, the thinnest and strongest strips of carefully tanned rawhide without hair were used. The weaving began at the center and gradually spread toward the edges in a complex and incredibly beautiful geometric pattern. The fine mesh prevented snow from sticking to the snowshoe, ensuring a light step with every movement. The snowshoe was attached to soft winter footwear, using a complex system of adjustable straps and sturdy knots. The toe of the shoe was firmly secured at the front of the mesh, while the heel remained completely free to move. This hinge system allowed the foot to move naturally, transferring body weight to the wooden frame without unnecessary strain. A properly adjusted attachment prevented chafing and ensured maximum comfort when walking long distances. Snowshoes for loose forest snow were made wider and rounder to maximize the contact area. Narrow and long models were used for traveling on the hard crust of open spaces, allowing for high speeds. Every adult member of the community had several pairs of snowshoes at their disposal, designed for different types of terrain. Maintaining this equipment was strictly mandatory and included regular checks of the leather webbing's integrity. Even a minor tear in a single strap of the webbing could lead to the complete destruction of the snowshoe right in the middle of a trek. Therefore, craftsmen always carried a small supply of materials with them for emergency repairs in the field. The damaged section of the webbing was carefully cut out and replaced with a new piece of thick leather right out in the cold. The ability to quickly and effectively repair one's equipment was a critically important skill for survival in the forest. The finished snowshoes became an incredibly durable tool, perfectly combining lightness with high structural reliability. They allowed people to easily cover vast distances across loose snow without sinking into deep drifts at all. Without this essential tool, any movement through a snow-covered winter forest would have been physically impossible. Be sure to like this video if you are also impressed by the engineering ingenuity and incredible craftsmanship of people from the past. What major winter gear manufacturers keep hidden was thoroughly understood by indigenous peoples hundreds of years ago. The first base layer of traditional clothing always consisted of the softest and most delicate materials, fitting snugly against the body. The outer protective layer was made of very thick, tanned leather that completely blocked the biting northern wind. A constant layer of air was created between these layers, acting as the perfect natural insulator in even the harshest frosts. The process of creating such clothing began long before the first frosts, with careful preparation and multi-stage processing of the materials. Raw materials underwent a complex tanning process using plant extracts and wood smoke from a fire. The smoke penetrated deep into the fiber structure, making the finished product incredibly soft and resistant to moisture. The thoroughly softened pieces were sewn together with thin, strong threads made from twisted plant fibers. The cut of winter clothing was extremely loose to ensure absolutely no restriction of movement during heavy physical labor in the cold. Long jackets reached down to the knees, reliably protecting the lower back and hips from being blown through by cold winds. A voluminous hood was a must-have for protecting the head and neck during prolonged snowstorms. The edges of the hood were often lined with an extra soft layer that prevented frostbite on the face from exhaled breath in the wind. Winter mittens were cut so that the thumb was positioned at the correct angle for a comfortable grip on tools. They were roomy enough to allow an extra layer of dry moss to be placed inside to absorb excess sweat. The mittens were often connected by a long strap looped around the neck to prevent them from being lost. Without hand protection in severe cold, a person risked suffering severe frostbite within minutes. Special attention was paid to the manufacture of tall, warm winter footwear, known to all as traditional high-top moccasins. The sole was made of the thickest and most durable leather, capable of withstanding prolonged friction against the wooden bindings of snowshoes. A thick insole made of dry cedar branches was always placed inside the boots, providing additional and very reliable thermal insulation. The upper part of the boot leg was tightly laced around the calf, with a leather cord to prevent deep snow from getting inside the boot. In severe cold, an additional loose-fitting raincoat was often thrown over the main jacket, creating another barrier against the cold air. This raincoat had no sleeves and fastened only at the throat, allowing the hands to move freely beneath it. This layering made it possible to easily regulate body temperature depending on the intensity of physical exertion. During hard work, the outer layers were simply removed to prevent dangerous overheating and to keep the undergarments from getting wet. Drying clothes wet from sweat or snow was a crucial nightly ritual requiring care and caution. The garments were hung on special wooden frames high above the hearth, where streams of warm air slowly evaporated the moisture. Drying too quickly near an open flame could cause the material to warp and lose its insulating properties. Clothes thoroughly dried overnight were an absolute guarantee of comfortable and safe work the following winter day. All seams on the clothing were carefully treated with special tree resins to completely prevent the penetration of cold air. Proper care of such high-quality items guaranteed their durability and the most reliable protection in any weather conditions. The loss or severe damage of warm gear in the middle of a long winter was considered one of the most serious threats to life. How exactly did the community obtain clean drinking water when all the surrounding rivers froze to the rocky bottom? The process of obtaining fresh water in the middle of a cold winter turned into a grueling physical ordeal requiring immense patience. All the surrounding rivers and deep lakes were covered with an incredibly thick layer of solid ice, which was extremely difficult to break through. The men used long, heavy pointed stakes made of hardwood to create small, deep holes. The work was carried out very slowly and methodically to avoid accidentally breaking their valuable tools on the hard, slippery ice surface. Choosing a suitable spot for the hole required a good understanding of the riverbed's topography and the current speed of the river hidden beneath the ice. They looked for areas with strong currents, where the ice was slightly thinner than in calm backwaters. After drilling the main hole, the edges of the hole were carefully smoothed out so as not to damage the leather containers when drawing water. Water from beneath the thick ice was always incredibly clean and fresh, requiring no additional complex filtration before consumption. The hole had to be cleared of ice several times a day, as the water froze instantly in the bitter cold. To prevent the hole from freezing completely overnight, it was covered tightly with a thick layer of pine branches and sprinkled with snow. This natural insulation significantly slowed the formation of new ice, making the water carriers work easier the following early morning. The tools for chopping ice were always left near the hole, stuck in the snow for quick access. The collected water was carefully carried to the main camp in special, spacious, in completely waterproof bags. These containers were made from single pieces of the thickest leather with seams impregnated with hot pine resin. Carrying the heavy water bags through deep snow was an exhausting task that demanded great physical endurance from everyone. To prevent the water from spilling while walking, a small, clean wooden disc was often placed on the surface of the liquid inside the bag. Inside the warm dwelling, the containers of ice-cold water were placed at a safe but sufficiently close distance from the hearth. This was done to ensure that the liquid did not freeze again, yet did not overheat from the intense heat of the open fire. Having a constant and ample supply of clean water was critically important for regularly preparing hot liquid food. In addition, water was used to soak dry materials when making new tools and repairing old ones. In winter, water was incredibly precious, so it was used with the utmost care and only for the most essential needs. Snow was melted for drinking only in the most extreme cases, when access to the river was impossible due to a severe storm. Melting snow required a huge amount of precious firewood, and the resulting meltwater lacked important natural minerals. Therefore, the arduous and dangerous trek to the river hole always remained the primary method of replenishing the camp's water supply. The process of collecting water was often accompanied by a strong, biting wind in the open space of the frozen riverbed. The people performing this task wore their warmest clothes and tried to move as quickly as possible to conserve heat. Their mittens would instantly become covered with a layer of ice from accidental splashes, which made it much harder to hold the heavy and slippery leather bags. Returning to the warm, wind-protected forest camp after such work felt like a true salvation. This daily and arduous ritual of water collection demanded strict self-discipline from every participant in the process. The precise division of responsibilities among all community members ensured an uninterrupted supply of this vital resource to the camp. Joint efforts made it possible to overcome any weather obstacles and maintain a high level of comfort inside the winter dwelling. A constant supply of water was one of the main indicators of a successful and properly organized winter camp. The truth that shocks many researchers lies in the incredible complexity of the Cree's additional winter defensive structures. When the weather deteriorated sharply, people instantly erected special protective screens made of heavily compacted forest snow. These tall barriers were erected at a precisely calculated distance from the main tent to radically alter the aerodynamics of the icy winds. The storm would strike the barrier with tremendous force and lose its destructive power, keeping the main structure completely safe. The process of creating such a snow shield began with marking out a long curved line on the windward side of the settlement. The snow was cut into large rectangular blocks using flat wooden shovels specially designed for this heavy work. The blocks were stacked on top of one another in a staggered pattern, forming a monolithic and incredibly sturdy wall taller than a person. The joints between the individual blocks were carefully packed with loose snow, which quickly turned into solid, icy cement in the cold. The geometry of such a protective wall had been thought out down to the smallest detail by many previous generations of northern craftsmen. The crescent shape effectively redirected strong air currents around the campsite, creating a zone of absolute calm directly behind the wall. Inside this sheltered zone, snow hardly accumulated at all, sparing people the need to constantly clear the camp area. This ingenious engineering solution allowed them to conserve a great deal of strength and energy during the long and merciless winter storms. In addition to the main snow barriers, small woven shields made of tightly bound fir branches provided extra protection. These lightweight and mobile structures were set up in places where the wind found gaps between trees or snowdrifts. The shields were easily moved from place to place depending on sudden changes in the direction of the prevailing cold air current. Such combined multi-layered protection made the winter camp virtually invulnerable to the most severe weather disasters. A unique microclimate formed within the protected perimeter, where the temperature was noticeably higher than in the open. The wind no longer blew precious heat through the tent walls, allowing for significant savings in stockpiled dry firewood. People could move freely around the camp, carry out their daily duties, and did not have to constantly hide inside their dwellings. The snow wall became a reliable and faithful guardian, protecting the peace and safety of the entire forest settlement. The snow barriers required regular and thorough maintenance, as strong gusts of wind gradually eroded their dense structure. People took turns going outside during the fiercest blizzards to immediately reinforce the weakened sections of the defensive shelter. This arduous, unceasing labor ensured absolute safety and psychological peace of mind within the warm living quarters. How did the craftsmen create reliable containers for the long-term storage of gathered resources in such harsh conditions? Birch bark was one of the most versatile, accessible, and sought-after materials in the complex daily life of the northern forest peoples. It was harvested on a large scale in advance, even before the onset of severe cold, when the bark could be easily and cleanly separated from the trunk. In winter, these abundant supplies were actively used to create a variety of containers needed to store bulky dried provisions. Craftsmen carefully soaked the dry birch bark in warm water by the hearth, fully restoring its original flexibility and natural elasticity. The tools for working with the bark were extremely simple, yet incredibly effective in skilled and experienced hands. Sharp stone knives were used for smooth cutting, and pointed bone awls for piercing precise holes. The birch bark was cut according to pre-measured templates, which ensured the correct shape and ideal proportions of the future product. The edges of the pieces were folded over and temporarily secured with wooden clips until they were finally and permanently sewn together. The birch bark sheets were sewn together using long and very strong spruce roots, which had been stripped of their bark beforehand. The roots were split into thin strips and also soaked in water, turning into reliable and incredibly strong threads. The stitches were laid tightly and evenly, ensuring high mechanical strength and relative water tightness of the finished seam. The upper edge of the basket was always reinforced with a flexible wooden hoop, which was securely bound with the same spruce roots. To ensure complete water tightness, the seams were carefully coated from the inside with a thick mixture of heated coniferous resin and fine charcoal. This resinous sealant quickly hardened in the air, transforming the birch bark vessel into the ideal container for storing any loose materials. The sizes of the baskets varied from very small boxes to huge crates capable of holding an impressive supply of provisions. The different shapes of the items were dictated by their intended purpose and the specific conditions of their subsequent use in daily life. Some baskets were specially fitted with tight-fitting birch bark lids that protected the contents from accidental contamination. For ease of carrying, wide straps made of thick leather or rope woven from fibers were securely sewn onto large crates. Birch bark possessed the remarkable property of not absorbing odors, making it an ideal material for storing food preparations. Food stored in such natural containers retained its freshness and nutritional value for many long months. The process of creating birch bark utensils was a true art form, requiring not only physical skill, but also a refined aesthetic sense. The surface of the finished products was often decorated with intricate geometric patterns, carved with a bone chisel into the outer layer of the bark. These traditional ornaments carried deep symbolic meaning and served as the distinctive mark of each individual craftsman. The decorated baskets were a delight to the eye and brought an element of primal beauty to the austere and utilitarian daily life of the forest camp. The finished birch bark items were incredibly lightweight, practical, and phenomenally durable when used correctly on a daily basis. They were completely impervious to moisture and reliably protected valuable food supplies from the damaging effects of damp air. The weaving process was passed down from generation to generation, sacredly preserving the strict proportions and time-honored shapes of each vessel. These baskets became an integral and essential part of complex daily life, ensuring strict order within the winter dwelling. Winter sleds, known to many as toboggans, were vital for transporting heavy loads through deep snow. Their design was distinguished by the complete absence of protruding runners, which allowed the bottom to glide directly over the surface of the loose snow cover. To build such specialized sleds, very long, flexible, and perfectly straight planks without a single flaw were required. These ideal planks were obtained through the painstaking and slow process of splitting whole tree trunks along the grain. Working with large frozen logs in the winter took a lot of precious time and always required the combined efforts of several people. A selected straight trunk of birch or ash was laid on wooden supports and methodically split using numerous wedges. The resulting rough planks were long and carefully hewn with stone chisels until they reached the required thickness and perfect smoothness. The surface that was to glide over the snow was polished with particular care to minimize any friction. The most difficult technical stage was correctly bending the front part of the planks to form the sleigh's characteristic rounded nose. To do this, The front ends of the planks were subjected to prolonged and intense exposure to hot steam or immersed in a bath of boiling water. The wood, softened by the high temperature, was carefully bent using special levers and securely fastened with strong ropes. The boards were left in this bent position until they were completely dry and their new curved shape was permanently set. The finished toboggan was assembled without the use of any rigid metal parts or conventional wooden nails. Several prepared boards were laid tightly parallel to one another and securely fastened with crossbars. Rawhide straps threaded through pre-drilled holes in the boards were used as fasteners. This flexible system of connections allowed the sled to absorb shocks from uneven terrain and prevent breakage under heavy loads. The curved nose of the toboggan prevented the sled from sinking into loose snow and helped it easily clear fallen branches and small obstacles. Special long loops were attached to the sides of the sled, through which a strong rope was threaded to securely fasten the cargo being transported. The pulling strap, which the person used to pull the sled, was made wide and soft so as not to chafe the shoulders during long journeys. A properly assembled toboggan was surprisingly maneuverable and easy to control even on very difficult forest trails. The sled allowed for the transport of huge supplies of firewood, heavy materials, and bulky items with minimal human effort. The toboggan's flat, wide bottom evenly distributed the enormous weight of the load, preventing it from sinking into deep snowdrifts. Steering a heavily loaded sled on descents and ascents required great physical strength and excellent knowledge of the terrain. Without this unique mode of transportation, regularly supplying the camp with everything it needed would have been an absolutely impossible task. The production of reliable and sharp tools never ceased for a single day. Even during the harshest and darkest winter months, stone axes, knives, arrowheads, and scrapers required constant replacement due to rapid wear and tear from daily hard labor. Craftsmen used flint blanks that had been gathered and sorted in advance, which were carefully stored in a dry place inside a warm tent. The process of chipping thin, sharp flakes from the main stone required incredible geometric precision and vast, years-long experience. To work with the unyielding stone, special scrapers made of very durable bone or horn were used. By pressing the scraper against the edge of the flint blank and applying precisely calculated force, the craftsman separated the thinnest stone blades. This precision technique allowed for the creation of cutting edges of phenomenal sharpness, capable of easily cutting through the densest materials. A single misstep could irreparably ruin a valuable workpiece, so the work required absolute silence and maximum concentration. The production of heavy stone axes for cutting wood was an even more labor-intensive and time-consuming process. A piece of hard rock of suitable size and weight was hammered with another stone for a long time until a rough wedge shape was achieved. Then the surface of the future axe was carefully polished with wet sand on a flat stone slab for many hours. The perfectly polished axe blade became less brittle and could withstand strong blows against frozen winter wood. Attaching the stone blade to the wooden handle was the most critical step, determining the overall reliability of the finished tool. A deep socket was hollowed out in the sturdy wooden handle, into which the polished stone wedge was tightly inserted. The joint was tightly and repeatedly wrapped with damp rawhide straps and generously coated with heated resin. As they dried, the leather straps tightened with incredible force, firmly securing the heavy stone in the wooden handle. Knives and small scrapers were fitted with short wooden or bone handles, suitable for precise and prolonged work. These tools were absolutely indispensable for making clothing, processing materials, and preparing daily meals. Each finished tool was thoroughly and extensively tested for durability before finally being put to everyday use. A properly made and sharpened stone knife, with its incredible sharpness, was in no way inferior to modern metal counterparts. Preserving the secrets of properly working hard stone was the absolute key to successfully overcoming all the hardships of northern life. These simple and even primitive-looking tools allowed people to build a complex and meticulously planned way of life. The ability to independently provide themselves with all necessary tools made the community completely independent of external circumstances. The skill of the stonecutters was respected and valued on par with the ability to hunt for food or build reliable winter dwellings. With the onset of early and dark twilight, active physical work outdoors ceased entirely to conserve heat and ensure safety. The entire forest community gathered together inside the spacious dwelling around a brightly burning and warming central hearth. The evening hours were always devoted to mending clothes, making minor repairs to tools, and preparing materials for the next workday. The soft light from the fire created an incredibly cozy atmosphere, in stark contrast to the icy night blizzard raging outside. It was during these quiet evening hours that the unhurried and painstaking work of sewing and decorating clothing took place. By the light of the flames, the women deftly worked with thin bone needles, joining cut pieces of thick fabric with sturdy stitches. The men inspected and repaired their hunting and carpentry tools, sharpening dulled stone blades. Not a single minute of this time was wasted, as the success of the next day's task depended on the quality of their preparation. Long evenings by the fire were also a time for passing on accumulated knowledge and important traditions to younger members of the community. Senior craftsmen spoke in detail about the ways of nature, methods of navigation in the forest, and the secrets of finding the best materials. Stories about past harsh winters and survival techniques served not merely as entertainment, but as a vital learning process. This oral tradition replaced any textbooks and allowed the unique experience of countless previous generations to be preserved. Alongside the crafts, the process of slowly preparing a hot evening meal over the glowing embers of the hearth was underway. Thick, nutritious broth simmered in suspended pots, filling the dwelling with the rich aromas of the cooking food. After a hard day's work in the bitter cold, hot food was essential for quickly restoring expended physical strength. The shared evening meal brought people even closer together, strengthening the invisible social bonds within the close-knit group. Gradually, the quiet conversations died down, and the weary people prepared for a long night's sleep under the protection of thick layers of warm fur. The fire in the hearth was carefully stoked down, but kept smoldering steadily until the very early frosty morning. Tomorrow, a completely new day awaited this strong community, filled with hard labor and a constant struggle against the harsh natural environment. This continuous cycle of work and rest allowed the northern peoples to live in harmony under the most unbearable conditions. Careful planning and unceasing labor were the absolute foundation of a prosperous life in the harsh northern climate. Every day demanded maximum concentration and the application of knowledge accumulated and tested by countless previous generations. Be sure to write in the comments which other aspects of indigenous people's daily life deserve a detailed look in future videos. Subscribe to the channel to continue exploring the most incredible historical facts and hidden secrets of the past.